Oh. Okay, I'm officially recording,
You're not
everyone.
going to be able to get a word in edgewise.
No, I would like you all to mute yourselves for now.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
If you could.
Very
And
nice.
I'm really excited to start the first of this monthly series I'm calling Meet a Transplant Stranger.
Okay.
Here's one right now.
There you go.
But we're all not, none of us are really strangers, right? Because once we get to know each other just a little bit, we share so much in common.
Mhm.
And I think that, you know, the word stranger, I kind of never meet a stranger. I'm a very outgoing person. And so I love to hear people's stories. And, you know, when Rob was going through really the worst of his sickness, which was really the end of 2019 and 2020, we realized that the donor population here in New York was very dire. And a lot of people wonder why. And there's a lot of, I mean, Manhattan, a lot of people don't drive. They don't have driver's licenses. And that's where you indicate if you want to be an organ donor or not. But the truth is, you're actually only going to, I think it's like a less than 2% chance that you're going to die in a certain way that you will be an organ donor, because you have to be in a hospital setting with, you know, hooked up to machines. And the definition of brain death is that if they were to remove the breathing mechanism, you could not take a first breath. The brain stem would be that, you know, damaged. So that would normally happen with a stroke, a catastrophic stroke of some kind, or a car accident possibly. But, you know, doctors want to save your life first. They do everything possible. So it's a complete misconception for those who may have fear that they're not going to save your life if you decide to check that box. And for us, we're thrilled that our donor checked that box. And while there is a lot of sort of survival guilt, which a lot of donor people talk about, another person said it's sort of like passing a baton, and you're really, that person's life would have ended. And the parts, the physical body, I mean, we're breathing because we have lungs and we have a heartbeat and a liver, and the liver is so important. And one of the things I learned in interviewing a lot of people was there's so many different types of liver disease. And sometimes you don't even know you have a liver disease, like the man we're going to meet in a minute, who had no idea he had a liver disease. But let me just say that when I put out the plea in March of 2020 I thought, these stories are incredible. People need to hear them. You know, anything I can do to move people and be inspired the way I am, I'm going to do it. And I needed something to focus on. I mean, you don't understand. There was just, the world was crashing and I needed a way to cope. So it was selfish in that respect, but it was really from a need of wanting to share these stories to give other people hope, the way these people were giving us hope, correct?
Oh, absolutely.
And so the support group at Mayo Clinic allowed us to meet these people. And when I put the plea out, the first person that came back was Jerry.
Yes.
Jerry Rosenberg. Can you say hi? Unmute yourself.
Hi, I just want to say I'm so glad to be here tonight. My brother's here in another room, so it won't be a conflict with both iPads going. And I'm so glad to see our other Jerry on here, looking alive and well from his hospital bed. Congratulations.
Yeah,
Yes.
Jerry just got his liver on the 28th of February. Yeah.
He's still at Mayo Clinic
He's actually lying in the hospital bed
as we speak.
as we speak.
Go like this, Jerry, so we see you. Jerry Polcari.
Hey, Jerry, congratulations.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
you know,
congratulations. And his wonderful wife, Lynn, has kept in touch with all of us day to day and let us know how he's doing, hi, and his progress. And it's just been a wonderful journey.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Jerry, how you doing?
I'm okay. I had a couple of setbacks, but but I'm doing okay, you know. I can't find a visiting nurse. I have sepsis again. So, and they can't find a visiting nurse to go home with me, so they're keeping me here in the hospital. And yeah, so they want to put me in a rehab, but I think I'd rather stay here if I can.
I think you're in the
Mhm.
right place.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We're gonna
I
get,
think so too.
we're gonna get to it. Now you have a new liver working, thank God, and
Yeah,
you feel so
yeah.
much better, right?
I do. Yeah, I do. It's a long, you guys all know. I mean, it's a long, you know,
Hi,
path,
guys.
long
Yes.
path.
Wes,
Uh-oh.
gonna be taking over for me.
Hold on a
How you
second.
doing tonight?
Okay, so getting back to what we were talking about.
Jerry.
Yes. The stranger tonight, that's not going to be a stranger for long, is Jerry Rosenberg. I used first names in my book, Saved by a Stranger, which for me, I really wanted this book out quickly because, you know, I just felt that people needed to hear these stories, as I said. And I would like to read chapter 10 from my book, Saved by a Stranger, Jerry and His Sassy Liver. Okay, so I'm going to read it. And then Jerry's going to be here to answer any questions.
I want to say one thing real quick that I want to interject before you read it.
Okay.
I don't know what it is about a liver transplant, but as I was laying in bed recovering, the first thought in my mind was, I'm going to write a book. And everyone that came to visit me said, you need to write a book. And I was very sassy at the time, and just, you know, the morphine and all the steroids and everything, I wasn't quite my normal self. So we all said it should be called My Sassy Liver. Well, of course, once I recovered and got back to life, I wasn't thinking about a book. And then Leslie came along, and now she has written my book in this chapter. So for that, I am forever grateful. Thank you.
Oh.
Awesome.
Back to mute.
Yeah. One thing you got to understand about transplant people in general is the gratitude that we feel
Oh,
as a
absolutely.
whole. It's like we got a second chance, and it's we, because as caregivers, we're right there. We're part of the situation, and you know, especially looking at your loved one and seeing what's going on in front of you, you can't believe it. But we're one of 40,000 people per year, families that get a transplant. So the luck and the gratitude you feel is immense.
Mhm.
And the community and the friendship is beyond.
Absolutely.
Chapter 10, Jerry and His Sassy Liver. Jerry, why do you think you have a sassy liver? I asked this witty, upbeat man almost 3 years after his liver transplant. Well, I think I have a sassy liver because after surgery, I started craving pedicures, and I never wanted anyone to touch my feet before, he replied with his slightly Southern accent. Then, according to my brother AJ, I was very snappy and demanding, so we nicknamed it My Sassy Liver. It's so crazy because now I crave foods that I never ate before, like crab legs with Tabasco sauce and melted butter. Before the transplant, Jerry was always on the go, out 7 nights a week, socializing, attending performances or board meetings of performing arts organizations. He owned properties in Florida, Las Vegas, and New York City, produced Broadway musicals, and owned a 17,000 square foot gay bar nightclub with his brother in Jacksonville. Just before Jerry's transplant, AJ said, we went to London for 10 days. I could not keep up with my brother, who kept going from early morning until late in the evening. I always called him Jerry on the run. Jerry, the youngest of 3 children, grew up in a conservative Jewish family in Jacksonville. His father, who traveled a lot on business, looked forward to coming home and spending time with his family, and his mother owned a health food store. At 18 years old, Jerry had never been out of the state of Florida and yearned to travel. He bought his first rental property, renovated it, and kept going. From then on, he traveled internationally and cherished his many friendships. He had no idea that he had any health problems. Along with overseeing the Jacksonville nightclub, he spent 1 week a month in New York City apartment and went to Las Vegas frequently for trade shows. After his brother's divorce, they bought a home together in Jacksonville with plenty of space to have their own privacy. Jerry was on top of the world until it almost came crashing down. On April 6, 2017, he and his cousin left on a princess cruise headed for Bermuda, Ireland, England, and France. The ship was 5 hours late leaving the port in Fort Lauderdale due to a bomb threat, so it was after 9 p.m. when they sailed. Deciding it was too late to go to the dining room for dinner, Jerry suggested they go with the buffet that evening. I didn't realize the food had been sitting out for 5 hours, waiting for us to be cleared to leave, and I ate something that made me very sick, he told me. The next morning, even more ill, he went to the ship's infirmary. They had me call AJ in Florida and tell him that I had food poisoning. They were making me get off the ship on Sunday in Bermuda. My brother said to keep in touch with him and he would come and meet me and help me get home. The next thing I knew, I woke up on a stretcher in an air ambulance landing in Fort Lauderdale. Suddenly, I realized that it was the following Tuesday and I had been in a coma all that time. When the Bermuda hospital had contacted his brother, AJ tried desperately to get a plane ticket to go there, but due to the holidays and a bad storm, he could not get a flight out. And the main goal was to get Jerry back to the United States. Finally, I posted a request for help on Facebook and a friend, Becky, reached out. She helped arrange the air ambulance service after I was pleading for someone to get Jerry on that plane, AJ recalled. Without hesitation, he put down his credit card for the $38,000 fee. Doctors had told him that Jerry had a 0% chance of survival in the Bermuda hospital, and if the air ambulance flew him home, his chance of survival was less than 1%. They thought I could die when the plane changed altitude during landing, Jerry said. My brother took the risk and hired the air ambulance. When the plane's altitude decreased and we were landing, I woke up. What a blessing. No one really knew what was wrong with me, and the only place that would accept me was the Cleveland Clinic in Weston, Florida. Another friend of theirs, Patrick, had helped by calling hospitals all over Florida. I was getting terribly agitated, feeling like I was talking to a wall when I talked to a hospital operator, said AJ, who drove 6 hours to meet Jerry at the Cleveland Clinic. During the next 24 hours, Jerry found out that he had a fatty liver that would not process the food poisoning. At first, I thought my liver would rejuvenate itself. I would do everything I could to be healthy to make that happen, he said. But my mind frame began changing after I received a call from a close friend, singer Tony Orlando, who told me that 6 of his friends had successful liver transplants. He made me promise that I would do everything I could to get a transplant to save my life. AJ, I remembered how stressful and worrying that time was. Honestly, I didn't understand a lot of what the doctors were saying. They were talking about his bilirubin levels, but I thought they were talking about a Reuben sandwich. When I heard the words liver transplant, I knew it would be better if we were closer to home. The only way the doctors would release Jerry was if we went straight to the emergency room at Mayo Clinic. The following week, when Jerry was able to travel, they made arrangements to do just that. It was the best decision of my life. Jerry said emphatically, from the ER in Jacksonville, he was sent home, and the next morning, Mayo called to start his testing and evaluation for transplant. The next week, Jerry got very sick and was admitted to the hospital. Afterwards, he was in and out of a coma. The head of Mayo Clinic visited me at the end of April, assuring me that they would do all they could to help me get a new liver and survive. On May 7, 2017, he received his new Sassy liver. I didn't realize I had a liver transplant until my brother told me the next day. That's how sick I was, he said. I was in the hospital nearly 3 weeks after surgery in a rehab facility for 3 weeks and another week in a nursing home before I could come home. I was scared every day for 3 months, especially when Jerry was in and out of comas, AJ confessed. Once the transplant was over, he went to rehab. I told him that I wasn't going to wheel him around or take him to the bathroom because I knew he could walk. No pain, no gain. We're fighters. Today, other than lots of medications every day and frequent blood work and testing, things are back to normal for Jerry. I'm involved in 2 wonderful support groups at Mayo, and I love volunteering with transplant patients and their caregivers and speaking to lots of organizations about the importance of organ transplantation. You can't take your organs with you. Helping someone else is the last unselfish thing you can do in life. In 2018, he participated in the Transplant Games of America in Salt Lake City, and the next year in the World Transplant Games in Newcastle, England. These were huge challenges for me. I've met some of the greatest people in the world, people who have been through many of the same challenges that I have. Surprisingly, I won a gold medal at the World Games for bowling. Jerry also felt honored to be part of the setting of the Guinness Book of World Records in Salt Lake City for being among the largest number of transplant recipients in one gathering. I thank God every day for this opportunity of a second chance at life. My mission now is to simply give back. That's why I'm so involved with support groups and everything else I'm doing. An amazing turn came in October 2020 when a longtime bar manager at Jerry's nightclub had an unexpected injury causing him to become brain dead. Clarence had been proud of his decision to be an organ donor, and his organs ended up going to people in need. Jerry, along with Clarence's mother and sisters, participated in the heartbreaking yet reverent honor walk that doctors made to transfer the body into the operating room before procurement. Hospital staff lined the aisles in silence. Later, Jerry coordinated the funeral service at the club for his employee and friend. Having inside me someone else's liver that has saved my life, and then experiencing my friend's death, which led to his ultimate gift as an organ donor, all of this has made me even more committed to advocating on behalf of organ donation and transplantation, Jerry said. My story has come full circle. The end.
Yep.
So that's Jerry's story. Jerry, thank you so
Great
much.
story, Jerry.
Thank you. Thank you. When you think back about it and you think back about the people in your life, my friend Cindy, my friend Susan, my sister Sharon, they were there every day with AJ, pulling me through it. And my niece Becky, who's a registered nurse, and everyone was there. And then, I didn't realize, I guess, how sick I was. And Becky's dad is my oldest friend from high school. And all of a sudden, I looked up one day and he was in my room to visit. Little did I know, Becky had told him that morning, they live in South Florida, if you ever want to see him again, today's the day you better come visit. And then a few days later, again, I looked up and my friend Gene, that's like a younger brother to me, that's an airline pilot in Hawaii, showed up in my hospital room to spend the night and give AJ a relief. And the same thing, I mean, people came from all over and people were so good to me. And I was very fortunate for that. So that's why it was exciting afterwards when I found out about the Jacksonville support group, that I could go and be there for people when we used to meet once a week. Yeah, we could get together and then you knew of people that were waiting. And several times I was able to go and sit with the next of kin because they're from California or Hawaii or wherever, and they're all alone and they don't have anyone to sit with them. And that's a long 6 hours. So that's been really good. Now, as things permit with COVID, getting back into the schools and teaching driver's ed classes, about organ donation things has been wonderful. And, you know, it's exciting because I get to do it with some of the people in our support group with Lynn and with Tuesday and with John. And it's really been a whole new community. These are all people that I never knew almost 5 years ago, and now you're all a major part of my life, and I'm very blessed. Thanks.
Oh, is AJ in the with? Can we meet
AJ,
him?
AJ, they're calling you. He
Why are
has
you
a-
hiding, AJ? Come on.
Yeah. Oh, this is the Mexican macho right here. This is Luigi. He's also in the book.
Hello, everybody.
So if you do have a question, yes, Sarah, I think you have one. Please unmute.
Hi, Jerry. I'm so excited that you're on here. I loved reading your chapter. I'm a California transplant, and Jerry was so wonderful to have. And I know that if he were asked the question who his favorite knitting partner was, it would probably
Sarah.
it would be me. But Jerry, I have a question for you. You said, and I love this part, when you were done, you wanted pedicures and you had a food craving of the crab legs with Tabasco. I'm curious because I also had a crazy food craving when I was done with my transplant. I wanted shrimp and grits, which I have never had in my life. And I wanted to know, one, did you meet your donor, and did the craving match up with the donor?
I have not met the donor. I wrote a letter at 4 months, and I wrote a letter at 2 years. And I personally have decided not to write again because I feel like writing twice and not hearing back, I don't want to keep bothering them. I don't want to keep reminding them of them losing their loved one. And so I haven't, and it's been so unique. If you remember, there was a girl in our group when we were all in it together that was from New England. And right after, it was like 2 months after her surgery, she heard from her donor family where they reached out to her. And the same thing happened with Tuesday where they reached out to her. But with me, it just hasn't happened. But it was the craziest thing because I'm very ticklish. So I never wanted a pedicure. And then all of a sudden, I'm craving pedicures, and I never wanted spicy food. And now I want Tabasco sauce on crab legs. It's crazy how things change.
Thank you, Jerry.
Sarah's also in the, her chapter is also in the book, and hopefully she will join us at one of the monthly Meet a Transplant Stranger series. Does anybody have a question that doesn't know anything about transplants, or liver disease or anything medically or non-medically?
I will say this, when you have a transplant in Jacksonville, you become an excellent knitter and you start knitting hats to send to Mexico. That's all I can say.
Oh, that's great.
Anybody
Like
have a question?
expert level knitting. Just wanted to throw that in there.
Jerry's story is very unique in the fact that he didn't know he was sick. He had no idea, right, Jerry? And so fatty liver is actually one of the most common liver diseases. People don't realize.
The truth of the matter is, I would go to my doctor every 6 months and get blood work. And I was always told that my kidneys were a little sluggish and I needed to drink more water. I was never told anything about my liver. I was spending 1 week a month in New York walking 8 to 10 miles a day. In London, I was walking 12 to 15 miles a day. I would walk everywhere. And I was 188 pounds and I was in great shape and everything was wonderful. The only problem that I've really had that I'm trying to work on is the steroids. I've gained a lot of weight with steroids. So eventually I'm hoping that too will come off. At least it's sort of under control right now.
How is your did you have any rejection from the liver?
I had 2 rejections, and it's hard to go back and forth, but both times I had gotten sick, and this was well before COVID, but I'd gotten sick and I was on antibiotics, and both times the antibiotic that I was on, and I don't know if this caused it or not, was a Z-Pack. And so I finally said after the second time of being in the hospital and rejection that I'm never going to take a Z-Pack again. But
So-
I've done well other than the 2 rejections, and I just had blood work today. Everything was great and perfect, but I still go once a month because of the rejections, where a lot of you are probably on every 3 months or every 4 months or something. So,
What about cruises? Do you think you'll go on any cruises?
well, yeah, I just, I went on a cruise, I guess it was a little bit a year after transplant, and did really great. And, we feel safe on them. And especially now going on a cruise where, 100% of the staff and the adults cruising are vaccinated and everyone tests negative 2 days before the cruise, you actually feel safer than going to Walmart or the grocery.
Mhm.
But for me, I wear a mask. When I go to the grocery, I wear a mask everywhere. When I get outside to pump gas, I wear a mask because you never know who's at the next gas pump. That's the way it's going to be for me, and it's fine.
Right. What, what do you think some of the common themes are for transplant patients? Because you've now been in the support group, well, since for a while now, and you were very helpful to us.
Yeah.
I miss the support group. I miss
Live,
the
the
Tuesday
live
morning,
one.
the live one, because we used to get together and sit in a circle and introduce ourselves. And sometimes that's about all we would do, is go around the circle to introduce ourselves. And most of the hour was gone. But we were there every Tuesday from 11 to 12. And those of us that wanted to, we'd go to lunch afterwards. We had a once a month potluck at the inn at Mayo, and then after it was torn down, at different people's homes. And there was just, the camaraderie was there, being able to connect with people. And now we don't have that. We don't have that one-on-one time. And hopefully Mayo will get back to I feel like they will always keep the Tuesday online support group, the Zoom one, but hopefully we'll go back to an in-person one as well.
We had the benefit of having both, because when Rob first got down to Florida, it was pre-COVID, and I was still up here in Nyack and going back and forth. And, I felt bad leaving him, but I had 2 teenagers and we were in the middle of school. So I found out about the transplant support group somehow. I really don't know, but somebody said it's a must. And so most people, and Rob's not a joiner particularly, and he's shy.
So I did go, and it really got me through my transplant, with Jerry checking on me every day. And we
How
have-
sick were you?
well, I mean, if you get the book, you can see a picture of me. It was bad. In fact, wait, here we go. There we go. I was pretty bad. I was yellow. My average weight is about 170. I was down to 135. I had the same thing as Gerald Hokari. We have itching in liver disease. You get a lot of itching, a lot of muscle waste. So it was, and I had 2 dry runs, which is where you get called. I got called a month after I got to Florida. And a dry run is when you get called in, they have a liver for you, and they inspect the liver. And at that time, they'll give you a hard time if there is going to be the surgery. But they called it off because once the liver got to the hospital, they inspected it, the surgeon. He said, I don't think this is good liver for you. It's best we just not do it. So they called it off. 5 months later, again, I got a call for a liver and got to the hospital, Mayo Clinic. And again, same thing, went through the whole process of, taking your blood vials, like 17 to 21 vials of blood that they'll take. And they called that one off, and that was really disappointing. And then finally, the third one I got, and third's a charm, right, Jerry? Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes. Hi, Roy Hoffman. I know you. You're a writer, wonderful author.
I'm Leslie's uncle, and
Yeah.
That
some
too.
of you I might have met when I came to the her book launch in Mayo in Jacksonville. I have a question for you, Jerry. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yeah.
One of the things that really interests me, seeing all of you here together and having met some of you before, and of course, having read about all of you, is that in the course of our lives, there are many groups that we're part of, and we go back to the high school reunion, the college reunion, maybe people we were on a trip together, and then we get together and have dinner. But not many of them sustain themselves very long after the initial event is passed, except one, and I speak about this having worked as a journalist, and I recall having done stories about veterans groups, who once a month meet for breakfast. Maybe they were combat veterans or maybe not, that sense of a band of brothers or brothers and sisters, And so I'm curious, Jerry, I understand how a support group gets you through something, but why is it important? Help me understand, as somebody who has not been through this, and why it's important to keep coming back to a support group when you're okay, or is there a point at which you sort of move beyond it and leave it behind? So please, sir.
Well, for me, the support group, I didn't know about it at first until I was in the hospital with my first rejection. And the minute I found out about it, I went immediately and religiously and got very involved and got to know people. And so what was wonderful for me was knowing people that had been through organ transplants like I had, knowing people that had to live their lives around blood work and testing and taking all the meds and things, and forming these friendships. And these are very special friendships. Also, it's a funny thing to say, I was never a drinker. I maybe drank, 3 or 4 sweet drinks a year. But now, obviously, we don't drink at all. So it's so nice having friends that don't drink, because we're all transplant recipients, and so much fun getting together with your friends and having potlucks. And, COVID robbed us of a lot that hopefully we will eventually get back. But it was the greatest thing in the world when my brother and I went to Salt Lake City for the Transplant Games of America. And all of a sudden we're there, that night that we set the Guinness World Book of Records, there were over 650 certified organ transplant recipients. And they put us in like one fenced in area. So we were all there together and it was all recorded. And being there with that many people and meeting people from all different walks of life. I met a young man and his family who was 18, and he had had a transplant when he was 3 months old. And his name is Jackson. And now he's in college, lives in South Florida, and he's a musician. And, we keep in touch through social media, meeting all these incredible people. I met a woman who was 26 years out from a liver transplant. Things like this give you so much hope. And then at the same time, you're meeting people that are the families who lost loved ones and get to be truly friends with the people that receive their loved ones' organs. I met I became friendly with this young man from Minneapolis when I was in Newcastle. And he introduces me to this lady that's his traveling companion. And it turns out it was her son whose heart he got. Just unbelievable. And now they go to all the transplant games together and they're the best of friends. And yeah, it's just a group you want to stay with. And maybe it's the way it is with veterans, that you've been through this, you've been so close to death, and you've survived through the kindness and grace of others and of the good Lord. You want to stay in touch. And that's it for me. You know, anytime someone like when Rob and Leslie are in St. Augustine, they say, hey, come on down and get together, you know, I'm jumping in my car to go. You know, I can't wait. It's exciting.
We appreciate it, Jerry.
Well, thank you. And that's just like my brother and I own a couple of condos in Delray Beach that we rent out for, you know, to snowbirds in the winter. And a few months ago in the fall, I was down there and I have a permanent new next door neighbor. And when she heard I was from Jacksonville, she just happened to say, oh, I was up at Mayo for treatments at one time. And that was all she said. But then one thing led to another. And I found out on another trip that she had had a liver transplant at Mayo 12 years ago and had been part of the same second chance support group. And it's just such a small world out there.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I think that for me, I had three main goals in writing the book. The first one being to help people on the transplant list, primarily who had questions like we did, who needed answers. Some of it was scary to learn what could possibly happen, but it's always better to face your fears than run from them. And the more you know, the more you're prepared.
Mhm.
The second goal was to encourage as many people, more people to sign up to be organ donors, because obviously that's really important. And the third goal is to encourage transplant centers across the country to have these weekly support groups.
Mhm.
Because the one that we were with in Montefiore in the Bronx, I remember asking, and there was really not a formal support group.
Mhm.
And, you know, I found it helpful. And I think that what happens is for me, I have this calling that won't go away. And I think, well, okay, it's over. You know, now let's go and live our lives. Why do I keep coming back to this? But, you know, it's important. And I feel like I can read these stories 100 times and still get the same amazement and the will to survive and thrive afterwards is
Mhm.
beautiful. It's just magnificent. And I think if we all lived as with that same gratitude, that would be wonderful. And like this man, Don, I'm just going to introduce you really quick because I met him through these conversations, and he started something called donorgratitude.org. It's a nonprofit, you know, and the word gratitude is just so important. And I feel like whatever's going on in the world, you can break it down to that moment in time and just try to be grateful for simply being alive.
Mhm.
Did someone have a question? I saw someone's hands raised earlier. Maybe not. Now's the time. Unmute and go.
I just want to say to each and every one of you on here, think about it in your future. Think about things you can do to give back. In any town, in any community that you live in, you could go and talk to high schools. I talk to a lot of driver's ed classes. Lately, I've been talking to anatomy classes, and they have lots of great questions. And just when people find out that only 3% of organ donors die in such a method to actually be an organ donor, and that's less than 3%, you know, they're amazed and they realize why we need such large numbers of people to check the box and say yes. And it's amazing talking to kids sometimes, because we're talking to a lot of 15 and 16-year-olds. And of course, they've gone to get their learner's permits and their parents say, no, you can't be an organ donor. And I always say you have to honor your mom and your dad, at least until you're 18. Then, of course, you can make your own decision. But, don't fight them. Just learn more about it. And maybe you can even change their way of thinking down the road. And it's been very rewarding working in the high schools. It really has.
One thing that's different about different liver diseases, and I don't know as much about heart and lungs, but what Rob had was an autoimmune disorder called primary sclerosing cholangitis, which we couldn't even pronounce when we were, and he was diagnosed 2 years after we got married in 2003. So that really put a damper on things. But, in our case, I would say that the psychological effect of knowing you have a disease like a time bomb affects your behavior, your decisions. I mean, right? I don't want to speak for you, but.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I lived with it for 18 years before my transplant. And like I was telling Don earlier, it's tough. Gratitude is the word, that we just feel so much gratitude to our donors. But it was tough. You're angry all the time. Why me? I wasn't a drinker, a smoker, or drug user, and it was why me, and you just hold on for your children, for your wife and family.
And one of the people we connected with is a man named Luigi, who's here.
Mhm.
Say hello, Luigi.
Hello, everyone.
And, when I first heard Luigi speak on one of these, I believe it was more of a Zoom. That's the beautiful thing about having a Zoom is that you can connect like we're doing right now from people in different places. And I really felt like Luigi, even though he had liver problems, his attitude was so amazing and positive. And he kind of had a reverse situation from Rob. Rob went into the surgery very, very sick and came out feeling great. Luigi, you could tell you really didn't have as many symptoms physically going in, correct?
No, so my story is completely the opposite. I went in very healthy, and then after transplant, I got very sick. It was so bad I ended up having to have 2 surgeries within a month of the first transplant. It didn't require a second transplant, but it did require 2 surgeries. But on the subject we were talking, is like, it's funny enough because I led my life like living to the fullest. I was diagnosed very young. I was probably 26 years old when I was diagnosed, and it took almost 20 years in the making in order for me to get a transplant. But more than my story is about Jerry's story. But what I wanted to see is if, like, for us that we're here and we've had a transplant, going through this process and the way we talk about it, it's quite easy because we already know what we went through. And when Jerry says steroids, I know what he means because I had a dose of steroids. But for anybody that doesn't know anything, or it's just a normal a guy that living his normal life, understanding transplantation, unless you're put in a situation where you need it, that's when you really start doing your research and finding out. And once you go through it, then you understand why it makes us so unique. But if anybody has questions, like more on information about transplant, we're not doctors, so we cannot give any medical advice, but we can only tell you about our stories, how we did and how we progressed through the process.
Excellent point. Because Luigi, you and I, we've become such good friends that we just went on vacation together. We went to Mexico, our family and yours. And while you were there, you were saying, it's true, unless you really go through it, you don't fully understand the impact, the hugeness of it. And we do feel like we're in a little tiny, small part of the world, but you're so right. I remember people talking about this because 18 years is a long time to have PSC. You were diagnosed with cancer, correct? Liver cancer. Luigi's also in the book, his story, and his story will be read as well next time. But I remember them talking about transplants and wait list and MELD scores and all of this. I was like, that's a long time from now. It's like one day I'll get pregnant, but I don't want to know about it now. It's like until you're there, wherever there is, you just want to be where you are today. But then everything moves in warp speed because you have to become almost like a friggin' PhD of something quickly.
In order to be your own advocate, and I'm sure it's no different with anybody else in this meeting, but for me, it was the understanding of what you were going through and the process. Being an organ failure is an incredible process. And for me, I didn't really realize what was happening until I entered end stage organ failure. And so now I understand what you have to do to advocate and bring awareness to such a strange journey, a life's journey that all of us have gone through, but probably didn't anticipate being where we're at right now. But it's just an incredible journey that
Don, can you just tell us real quick what happened to you? What transplant, how did you find out what happened?
I had, as I was saying earlier, I was fishing in Mexico in 2015, and I got a really bad flu virus. And I was in bed in Mexico for a week in remote Baja, and I, healed from the flu and thought everything was going to be okay. And in 2 years after that, 2017, I had a massive heart attack while my wife and I were just visiting in San Francisco. And I just went, they thought I was going to be okay. They had no idea that I had this virus that attacked my heart, and it ended up getting into my lungs, and it wasn't a cancerous, but my heart literally was draining and bleeding into my pleural area. And so, they had to abandon my left lung and do a decortication on my right lung. And so all throughout this process, these 2 years, I was thinking, I'm going to get better. I'm very active, and it just didn't happen. And in 2019, I ended up having to have a heart transplant. And fortunately enough, I was only 3 weeks on the waiting list, and I received my new heart. And so it's just it's a journey that all of us have experienced, and it's wonderful in a lot of ways, but very challenging and scary in a lot of other ways. Everybody that lays down or goes to get a transplant is, it's an amazing but very scary thing.
Can I ask something?
Please.
I don't know how to put up that little yellow hand. I'm sorry.
No, I want you to just jump in, everyone. Jump in.
My first time really to do a Zoom, but I'm still pretty young at this, only 8 months. And I want to get really involved. And I was listening to Jerry, and I'm thinking, how do you find out about all that stuff? I I started to get real involved, but I got CMV and I've been very sick and just coming off CMV. And but I'm feeling better and I'm ready to get involved. But you're talking about these games, and I don't know how to find out about all this stuff. I'm in Fort Worth. I don't really have a support group here. I actually live in a small town, but I'm home in Fort Worth right now. I don't have a support group, only online. I have a few friends I met, but we're kind of scattered. 2 friends that we had our liver transplants about the same time. So I have those 2 girls, but we're not in the same area. So I don't really have anybody to turn to. And I'm trying to adjust to this whole thing. And, you know, this first year's been a little tough. I haven't made my first year yet, but I'm getting close. But how do you find out about things to do in your state? I did the UNOS thing, but can somebody kind of give me a little direction, since I am kind of new and adjusting to this?
Well, one thing I want to say is in the Dallas area, we have an incredible couple, Linda and Gary, who are part of our Second Chance support group. And Gary had a transplant and they come back to Mayo once a year. So we get together and usually go to dinner when they're here. But as far as the transplant games go, if you'll Google Transplant Games of America, and the next ones are going to be in San Diego in July.
Okay, I had never heard of such until you said that.
I had never heard of them until I found out about it from Kristen and Steve and our support group, because Steve, who one of the people that started Second Chance, he's been to numerous of the games through the years, and to meet these incredible people that have been through what you've been through, and it was really exciting, because when I went, you know, it's funny how things come about. But when I went to the ones in Salt Lake City, I was Team Florida, and you're competing against, you know, 49 other states. Then all of a sudden you go to the World Transplant Games, and you're Team USA. So these people that you compete against the year before, they're your teammates. So now I'm looking forward to the next time I go to a games in America. It'll be great seeing people from other states that we had gotten to know each other in Europe. And it's just, to me, it's good being under a roof with so many people that have been through things very similar to what I've been through. And we have stories we can share and things like that. So get involved as much as you can.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying. I think when this happened, I was diagnosed in 2017, but I stayed pretty healthy up until just February 2021. It went very quickly. I got my liver in 12 days after going on the list because I was very sick. So I didn't have a whole lot of time to get my mindset, and I thought I was just going to come out of surgery, be normal. I'm finding out that's not really the case. I'm not normal, but I'm a different person now, and I will always be a different person. And that's sinking in. It took a while, but it's really sinking in. And I really need that camaraderie with others who can identify with me, because my family have been wonderful, but they don't understand totally what I've been through.
That's exactly what happens. We have another friend from Transplant that says transplant is only the beginning. A lot of people that don't know about it, they think transplant is a cure, but it's the opposite. It's a way to extend our lives, but it's a beginning of a new reality.
That's what I'm finding out. It's just, I say I'm still pretty new to this, and I'm learning, and I'm trying to learn as much as I can.
You should
Can I
get
give you
involved.
another option or another answer to your question?
Sure.
There's an organization called Transplant Recipients International Organization, TRIO.
Yes.
And I know Leslie well. I've reviewed her book, and we have chapters around the country. But in today's world of virtual meetings, there's an opportunity for you. If you go to trioweb.org,
Okay.
TRIOWEB.org, under chapters, look up Oklahoma, and they are running a support group, which is mainly liver. We reach out to all organs and offer support like you're looking for, but this is a support group that meets once a week. And our chapter in Oklahoma has as its format a support group. And you'll find people there that are waiting for livers and those have had livers, and they would welcome you, because the days of geographic-based support groups really have enlarged now that everything's so virtual. And so I can recommend that you go to Oklahoma, not really, but to reach out across the waves there to Oklahoma. So trioweb.org, under chapters, look up Oklahoma.
Okay.
And when you get there, you'll see some links that will take you there. And their support group is meeting right now, for example. And so that might be exactly what you're looking for.
And you know, that's hard for me to go to a Texan to go to Oklahoma.
Where did you get your transplant?
When?
Where?
Where in Baylor at Fort Worth.
Okay.
I was on the list both Fort Worth and Dallas, but I live close. I'm in Fort Worth. So
I'm in Montgomery, Texas. So I mean,
Oh,
on
I
the
know where
north side
that
of
is.
Houston.
close to Houston, yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot that you're in Texas, but there's 2 chapters down in Texas. So also look up Texas.
I will.
I don't know the geography of Texas to see how close they are to you, but they also offer support virtually. So there's 3 different answers to your question. How do I
Thank
get
you.
support? There they are.
Thank you so much.
Also, what I
Maybe
want,
Leslie can open a meeting once a week and we can meet another day.
well, what I wanted to say also is we went last night, we were on the New Jersey Sharing Network. So there are 52, they call them OPOs. When people say OPO, it stands for Organ Procurement Organization. So, and I explain a lot of this in my book because there's just a lot of facts and things that you can be overwhelmed with unless it's in as part of a story. Then it's more interesting. It's like much more interesting to see living history than sometimes just memorize dates.
Mhm.
So you have an OPO, an organ procurement organization. They're primarily the people that they're very responsible. They're the ones that really like when there's a call from the hospital that there's a brain dead person, you know, and then they have to, by law, call the local organ procurement organization, give basic information before they send anybody out. There's a lot of medical stuff that gets uploaded and discussed and so forth. But also what they do is they really work with volunteers. So people that, because they want to get more donors. And the best way to do that is to tell your story so that it breaks it down and it's like you're a real human being. So when Jerry, you work with your local OPO, correct?
Right. They're in Gainesville, Florida, and LifeQuest. And that's who I work with, Jessica, the coordinator there, who asks me when I'm available to go to schools. And sometimes we go for 1 hour, or we go for 2 hours and talk to 2 classes. Sometimes we go to 6 hours and talk to every class through the day. It's exciting. We used to do big auditoriums, but now we're only doing small classrooms because they're trying not to have the big gatherings.
You're doing exactly what I want to do to promote organ donation and to give information, because most of the people I've come in contact with don't know anybody, they don't know anything about it, and they'll think, well, I can't do it, you know, or I won't do it because, you know, so I want to promote that because I know there's so many people waiting, and I'm so grateful that, you know, I was given this gift of life. I mean, how fabulous is that?
Well,
and it makes you want to get out there and
Yeah.
do this, right?
Yeah. Well,
Does
Yeah.
Baylor have a group though? Doesn't
yeah,
Baylor
I
have a
urge
group?
you to get in touch with in the Fort Worth area, get in touch with your closest OPO and see where they send you.
I'll check with them. Before my transplant, my doctor sent me to a support group and we showed up and my husband and I were the only ones there. And the nutritionist was there, but I had studied so much on nutrition. We talked and she, you know, I studied a lot before my transplant, but I wasn't prepared for more of the emotional changes. I think that, you know, you're not ready for that and you're not prepared because your books you're reading don't tell you about how you're going to change.
Well, the hardest thing for me, the few days after transplant, of course, I've been in and out of several comas and I couldn't walk and I was basically bedridden. And I was so happy that I had had a transplant and had a second chance at life. And then at the same time that I'm so happy, I had this overwhelming grief over me of guilt that here I am so happy while there is a family out there planning their loved one's funeral, because it was that week of transplant. So that was all I could think of was, I don't know who they are. I'm praying for strangers because I know somewhere someone is planning some type of a funeral or memorial for their loved one that I'm living because of. And
Oh,
it's
that's-
a
I understand that. I do that too. And we had just buried my son-in-law at 39 right before my surgery. And I thought some families going through what we went through, and I'm happy I'm alive. I just know so much what you're talking about.
Real
Yeah.
quick, Jim Gleason, thank you so much for being part of this. See, I met you. I was just surfing the web like everyone, and then I saw that you had a book review section. So I contacted you, and you were so nice, and you read my book very quickly. But tell
Well,
us a little bit
I couldn't
about
put
you.
the book down. Once I picked it up, and I have other books in the queue, and you just went to the top of the queue. I read the first couple of pages when a book comes in. I'm doing another one right now, for example, all transplant books. And I made the mistake of reading the first 3 pages. And then I looked at the back cover, Rob, and I said, she had a different husband back then.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the difference. I told it in the review, I said, look, start with the back cover. You won't
Yeah.
believe the 2 couples that are out there. They're the same.
Yeah.
And I just loved your book, and I couldn't put it down. And so, yeah, I'm not a fast reader, but I got it done in a day just because I stopped everything else. That's how good the book is.
That was
Really
not a
recommend
plug.
it.
I did not mean for you to say, just so you know.
Hey,
No, but
listen, I
when
have to go to another meeting on the
Yes.
hour, but go ahead. I was just going to write you a note here saying goodbye.
okay.
This is a great group, and TRIO is an organization I happen to be a leader of. I am out with a heart 28 years now. I've worked on TRIO board and committees. I'm sorry, UNOS board and committees, and everything Leslie is telling you is absolutely the facts that you will learn over time as you get involved. We have a great OPO here in the Philadelphia area. I'm in New Jersey, across the bridge, and I volunteer with them all the time. We have somebody with the same commitment to educate the young people in schools. They've done literally thousands of presentations. Personally, I keep a spreadsheet every time I talk to a group, and I just passed the 500 mark. And so your story is what people will listen to. It's a one-on-one thing. If you can get in front of an audience, that's even better, but share your story with one-on-one. And what you've just explained, Grace, is exactly what everybody feels. You're so thankful. Somehow you've got this amazing gift of life. And often you don't know the person or the family that gave you that gift. How frustrating is that? And so you take action to spread the word as a way of gratitude for that anonymous gift.
man.
And so keep this up. This is really great, and I have to leave, but I'm pleased you let me have this moment to say, check out trioweb.org, and my contact information is there. The support groups are there. We have a lot going on, and the big thing I would say for anybody that's had their transplant, there is a sister website that you can link to from that website, and that's all about post-transplant cancer. Most of you are never going to have a rejection. You're not going to die from rejection. Medicine's got too good. What you will die from is cancer, and you are at a higher risk for cancer, as I am, and anybody that's on the drugs we're on. That's what's keeping us alive. And so there's another website that I developed over the past 7 years, all about post-transplant cancer, so that you can understand it, what to do about it, and how to keep alive. Like I said, 28 years, over a quarter century. My birthday is tomorrow, my real birthday.
Oh.
I'll be 79, and I never
Wow.
expected to be this close to 80, believe me. Not when I was in the hospital 28 years ago, and somebody gave me life, and I'm here talking to you today. Isn't that amazing? It's amazing
Wow.
to me.
Happy birthday,
Thank
Jim.
you. Hey,
Well-
thanks,
Happy
everybody.
birthday.
Take care.
All right.
Well, it looks like we're about a little after 8. Would anybody like to say anything before we do our singing goodbye? Paula?
I just wanted to say that this was such a great meeting to be a part of. And Jerry, I met you at the book signing, and I just want to thank Leslie and everybody in my support group, because they kept me going on a daily basis. And I was so near death, I had already made my plans to meet my maker. I wasn't even on the transplant list, and thanks to Mayo and to God, I got it 3 days after they put me on the list, and got it on Valentine's Day, which is a day of love. I still haven't been in contact or haven't been able to reach a support group in Tallahassee. And I've made some inquiries, but I have yet to hear it. But I do want to be a part. And often I love to tell my story to anybody who will listen. And I have promoted Leslie's book every way I know how.
Well, Paula, you're going to be one of our guests. So you're going to get that opportunity very soon. So I'm going to have a little private one-on-one.
You and Rob have been so supportive of me, and Jerry has been supportive. He gave me, he got in contact with a person when we were at the book signing, but I never heard from anybody, and I never wrote anything down. So I still hope that I can get involved some way in Tallahassee and tell my story and urge people to be on that donor list. And I'm a donor on my driver's license, and I never knew that I would end up being a recipient of a liver. And you do have a new life, and you're so grateful for that life that you're still here, because I was at death's door and didn't think I was going to make it, wasn't even on the list. And God and Mayo just found a way to bring me back. It took me 2 days to get my liver, and my recovery was not immediately. I envy Rob. He was up and about, and it took me a while to even, I had to learn how to talk. I had to learn how to walk. I had to learn how to do everything over again. And Jerry, I don't know if you're still on, but I had to go to rehab, and it was a while, but I had such a wonderful caregiver of 49 years. We've been married. And
he's sitting next to you, isn't he?
Yeah. And he's been by my side 24/7 ever since this. And I'm just so, like you say, I'm so grateful, and I'm so blessed that I'm still here to enjoy a new life. And I'm thankful every day. And thank you all those people in my support group. Jerry, Luigi.
We love you, Paula.
Yes, we love you.
And you never get tired of being in that Tuesday meeting. You look forward to it.
Yes.
Every day. And
Leslie's got to do her own meeting once a week, I guess. We all have time.
Yeah.
And at the book signing, I got to hug people and just show love for all those people that were there. And Leslie, your book is such a gift to so many other people. And you're a blessing to us all.
Thank you so much, Paula. That's, just one person at a time. That's all we can. It's just, and one story at a time, one liver at a time, one heart, one lung. We're going to end this tonight with the song that I wrote called "Be a Giver of Your Liver."
Nice to see you, Louis.
Nice to see you. I am so quiet here.
I know, you're only just sitting there.
I am so quiet listening to everyone. Leslie's book has been something. I am not going to prolong the closing of this, chapter, here. Next time I'm going to, there's just so much I want to share, but I just wanted to listen to people, today. I I had the same experiences that most of you experienced. Mine started with cancer of the liver, so I think I had it, twice. I appreciate life every moment. I use the word every moment, and sometimes people don't understand it. And that's what it is, really. I take life every moment. Things could change the next moment, for you. We may be here today and tomorrow, we'll be gone. So let's appreciate and thank everyone.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Thank you, Leslie.
thank you guys for everybody here that was here for a little bit. I love you all. Love you, Lewis. Love you, everyone that's here. And we're gonna sing "Be a Giver of Your Liver." 1, 2, 3. Be a giver of your liver when it's time to go, and you can help lots of people that you may not know. Don't be afraid to give, so someone else can live. Be a giver of your liver when it's time to go. That's my 17-year-old son.
Good night.
Thank you, everybody. Wonderful watching, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Just check in
Thank
with
you.
my website for the next meeting, leslie.com. I think you got it at this point. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
You're all amazing.
Good night. Good night to all you people.
Good night.